mission of the Freehold Township School District is to honor and support every learner every day on the journey to become curious and engaged members of a diverse global community. A notice listing the time, date, and place of this meeting was posted on the public bulletin board of all Freehold Township schools, on the entrance door to the administrative offices of the Board of Education, on the district website, at the office of the Freehold Township clerk, published in the Asbury Park Press on January 7th, 2022, and sent to the news transcript on January 5th, 2022. I'd like to invite everyone who'd like to join in the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the nation under God, indivisible. Roll call.
Mrs. Costanza?
Here.
Mrs. Cosarino?
Here.
Mr. Georgiullo? Here. Mrs. O'Sullivan?
Present.
Mrs. Patton?
Present.
Mrs. Bowman?
Here.
Mrs. Vinatoli?
Here.
Mr. Amoroso? Present. Mrs. Lambert?
Here.
Quorum.
Enrollment.
The only communications is enrollment. December of 21, we had 3,496 students. January of 22, we were at 3,502. And January of 21, we were at 3,502. There's only communications either.
I will skip President's remarks for the moment, except to welcome Becky to the table. Thank you very much. We'll all remember that. Meeting to remember. Gift to you. And for those waiting at home, we apologize for the delay. We had to delay the meeting for a short period of time. So we'll move on to the administrative report.
Thank you. As we shared this week with our school communities, as effective yesterday, we did stop the quarantining and contact tracing of in-school close contacts, those that are household contacts and are still asked to quarantine for 10 days with specific provisions for testing and returning sooner than that. And positive cases are still quarantined for 5 days. We evaluated our data over time. It's remained consistent, a little bit uptick with Omicron, but still in the single digits of the percent of students who were identified as in-school close contacts and subsequently positive. However, in households, it is a much higher transmission rate in households, and that is why we are keeping the household close contact at this point. Another communication was sent after the governor's press conference where he indicated that after March 7th, he will lift the mask mandate. We did communicate with our school community that we will subsequently make masks optional after that date. And that is all I have. I am going to, again, I'd like to welcome Becky as well. Hit the ground running, currently doing two jobs and doing them very well. She will be presenting this evening the fall map and iReady data. The students, while you're getting set up, the students have taken the winter map and iReady. The window closed, and now we wait for the data to be put together, and a presentation will be either we have a lot of board commitments for board meetings. We want to start student recognition again. We have to recognize Teachers of the Year. So we're trying to balance how much we do at each meeting. So I did share some map data from winter preliminarily with the curriculum committee this evening. Winter, a comparative of the winter this year and 3 winters back, and then also with winter norms and a comparison of the data that Mrs. Montgomery sharing tonight with the winter data from this year, so you can see some growth. So I at least got that to the curriculum committee so that they had a preview, and it does look very good.
Thank you. Right. And thank you to the curriculum committee for letting me do a dry run of my presentation earlier this evening to go through this information. And I'm going to lean on my colleagues here in the audience to correct me if I'm not right about anything. First, I do want to share our purpose for analyzing student data, which is really broad. We look at student data at the district, the school, the class, and the student level to look at things like programmatic changes or initiatives that need to be attended to, trends, comparing norms, looking at schools and comparing schools across the district in terms of classes and class data that we look at, how are classes within a school, principals and supervisors use that information to look at classes across grade levels and within grade levels. And then, of course, and most importantly, looking at our student assessment data so that we can best serve the needs individually for each of our students. This slide is really sort of a caveat to my presentation this evening. Linkit this year has, or for this assessment period, has provided a series of what they are referring to as statewide data. However, in my estimation, the term statewide is a little deceiving. The data that's being compared in these presentations is our district to the other districts in New Jersey and Pennsylvania that use Linkit as their data warehouse, which is approximately, depending on the grade level, between 30 and 40, around 35 school districts statewide that are using this. So it really isn't statewide data. I don't want there to be any misconception. That's just what Linkit is calling it in their reports. So that's how it's reflected on the slides. First grade and second grade, we use iReady as the reading diagnostic. There are parent supports and resources that are provided, and letters, I believe, are going home to families soon with the most recent batch of data. iReady allows us to look at data over across years and to compare cohorts of kids. So I'll show you some of that data today in terms of how kids performed in one grade level and then the subsequent year. And then, as we always do, we look to our subgroups of students, our race and program, to see how we can better serve some of our minority populations. So this is first and second grade ELA data. The columns on the left are first grade, columns on the right are second grade, and it compares data across the last 4 years, right? So you can see the trends across the last 4 years. Something that I think is important to note about all of the data I'm going to share with you this evening: we're comparing fall to fall data, because this is the fall data presentation, even though we're knee deep in winter right now. And all of our students who took these assessments last fall took them at home. So you are going to notice there may be an ever so slightly small dip from last year to this year. And, I'm really looking through the lens of the testing environments were not comparable. This is the percentile. And just as a reminder, 50th percentile is the average, right? So we're looking at test data. We can keep calling in front of the camera, sorry. Looking at the 50th percentile being the average. This to me is really the most meaningful data that we should be looking at, and this is the cohort data. So the bar on the left is students who were first graders last year, and the bar on the right is students who are second graders this year. So we're comparing we're looking at students across 2 years and looking at their growth from first grade to second grade, which is quite nice. This is the data looking at subgroups. So these are our proficiencies by race: Asian, Black, Hispanic, multiple identified races, and white. Again, as I shared with the curriculum committee, this is an area that as a district we are keenly aware of that needs attention and focus, and having a lens of equity in terms of curriculum and instruction for our minority populations is definitely something we are attending to. This is proficiency by program. So these are our students who qualify for free and reduced lunch. Section 504 are English language learners, our special education, and our general education students. This is just a pretty extensive list of all of the other pieces of data that we store in Linkit for our first and second grade students around the area of literacy. So these are all different assessments that are done related to phonics and the developmental spelling assessment, F&Ps, writing, all of these assessments are stored in our data locker in Linkit so that we have access to kids' data over time. The MAP assessment is given to second grade students in math, and then for our third through eighth grade students in reading and in math. Again, we have that deceptive statewide comparison that will appear on the slides. And I'll, say that all as a caveat. Again, it's not really, we're comparing ourselves to 35 other districts that are probably very comparable to us. Again, all of the tests that students took this year were in school, different from last year. We did have some issues with testing in terms of kids being quarantined and then makeup testing impacting that testing window, but this is a very good sample of, a strong sample of our students who completed the assessment. These are the mean scores or the mean RIT scores for MAP assessment, and I'm going to share this slide, but then keep referring back to it. That mean score, we're going to be looking in the fall column for the grade levels, second through eighth in math, third through eighth in language arts, and focusing also on that standard deviation. One thing I think it's important to note is the size of the standard deviation is pretty significant. So while you may see data that I'm going to share with you where it looks like there's the RIT score dropped 1 or 2 points, or the RIT score went up 1 or 2 points, when the standard deviation for that grade level is 13 or 14 or 15 points, that drop up or down is not statistically significant because it's within that standard deviation. And RIT scores. This has been something I've been practicing all week, getting a better understanding of RIT scores. Neil suggested that I use the visual of a ruler because it helped me to understand a ruler and sort of how RIT scores are explained or best understood. RIT scores fall in a range, and just like a ruler, there's an end. There's a finite end to it, right? So one of the things that you'll notice, and I can go back to that previous slide, is you'll notice that on these mean scores, there's a ceiling, right? Like at some point, the score you get to the highest score you can get. And you'll notice at the higher grade levels, the difference between 7th and 8th grade versus the difference between 2nd and 3rd grade is much narrower, right? And so that's where we notice it looks like scores are flattening off, but it's because the mean score at those grade levels are much closer. The other thing I want to say about RIT scores before I move on is that this is not an achievement test. This is a test of growth, right? So we're looking at how kids are growing over time. We're not looking at measuring their achievement compared to a norm, a national norm. So this is not a nationally normed test. Okay, so this is grade 2 math. The left-hand side of the graph is how our students performed in grade 2 in the last 4 years, and then the right-hand side, the last 3 years of, again, that statewide, I say it with air quotes, statewide data. You'll notice, again, as I shared, that slight dip from 2021 to 21-22, but again, statistically insignificant. When the mean for second grade math was 175. Both of those scores are, very well around the mean. This is 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade math, again with that statewide comparison. Our 3rd grade RIT score was a 190, with the 3rd grade mean being a 188. Our district's 4th grade mean score was a 4th grade score was a 203. The mean was a 199, and the 5th grade score for our district was a 212, and the mean was a 209. So, again, not statistically significant, but exceeding the mean in all 3 of those grade levels. Again, this is the most meaningful data that we can look at, and that is that cohort analysis. So students going from 2nd grade to 3rd grade, 3rd to 4th, and 4th to 5th. And again, you see this increasing trend of our kids, moving up in performance. These are our 3rd, fourth, and fifth math students and their proficiencies by race. Again, I draw your attention to the right-hand column, which looks at the RIT score, and we compare that RIT score to the mean. And again, this is an area of attention and focus for us as a district, and recognizing that, again, while it's not statistically significant in some of our subgroups, our district score is lower than the mean, and that's an area of growth for us. This is same thing, proficiencies by program. Free and reduced lunch students, section 504, English language learners, special ed, and gen ed. Grade 3 through 5 ELA. Our third grade score was a 190, with the mean being a 186. Our fourth grade score was a 202, with the mean being a 196. And our fifth grade score, a 209, with the mean being 204. Again, more importantly, that cohort analysis of how kids are growing over time. And the proficiency by race and by program. This is middle school math. Linkit does provide us comparative data between our two middle schools. So on this chart, you're going to see 6th grade, 7th grade, 8th grade math. What's identified on the far right-hand side of the chart, which says 9th grade math, is our 8th grade algebra class. Okay. So again, one of the things you'll notice is that our middle schools are really, really comparably working in the same place. And again, all of our scores are solidly around the mean. So 6th grade, the mean was a 214 and we're at a 218. 7th grade, the mean was a 220 and we're at a 226. 8th grade, the mean was a 224 and we are at a 220. And for the algebra class, the mean is a 226 and we're at a 246. This compares Eisenhower's math scores to that statewide score. Again, I don't feel like it's data worth comparing, but it's something that Linkit gives to us and it's worth sharing. And this is Barkelow's math scores compared to that statewide number. And then these are our proficiency by race for 6th, 7th, 8th grade math, and again, the algebra class. And by program. Middle school language arts, 6th grade, our district was a 216 and the mean is a 210. 7th grade, 217 with a mean of 214, and 8th grade, 221 with a mean of 218. So again, we're solidly within the mean for each of those grade levels. Here's Eisenhower compared to the state, which Mary noted was markedly similar. And Barkelow compared to the state. Oops. And then this is our whole middle school population, grades 6, 7, and 8. Race, Eisenhower and Barkelow. I didn't mention this earlier, but this column in the chart, the N score is blacked out because that identifies the number of students, and that could, because the numbers are so small, it could be individually identifying. So we wouldn't want to, identify students. And the same for program. And this is not new or different, but now that we have this data, what do we do with it? Obviously, it's an excellent tool for progress monitoring for our students. It helps us to identify needs for intervention supports that we need to put in place. It helps us in terms of developing response to intervention plans. in the schools for students. It has helped us to identify these after-school supports that we're providing at both the elementary and the middle school. And also identifying areas where we may need instructional materials to support our curriculum. All right. Questions? Yeah.
I was gonna actually email it to you, but I knew you were
No, that's fine.
presenting, so I just figured. So I know you're in this position like a hot second, but
6 days.
yeah. What is your takeaway, like, from this? Were you expected it to be? Were you hoping it would be better? Are we looking forward to better?
Yeah,
Like,
so
was this
I
good?
don't know that I had expectations, honestly. I think
Okay.
I went into this, like with a completely clear, non-judgmental lens. Because remember, I'm removed from this
Right.
level of assessment in recent years. So it was wonderful for me to receive questions from board members over the weekend about this presentation, because it caused me to dig deeper and to better understand the data that I was presenting to you. From a really sort of Pollyanna perspective, I think our kids are doing really well. I think our kids are really doing well. I don't see that learning loss that schools across the country are concerned and screaming about. I'm seeing my colleagues in the audience nodding their heads. And I think it speaks volumes to the incredible work that our administrators and our teachers and our coaches are doing in their schools to make sure that isn't happening for kids.
We're really looking forward to when the presentation's ready for you to see the winter data and the progress from even further progress
From fall to winter. Yep.
Something else that might be interesting to look at is MAP released data, I think in the fall, Neil, where they said nationally they were seeing the learning loss on their averages, like below their norms.
Yeah.
So it'd be interesting to look at those numbers in comparison to how we're doing, because I suspect that we're doing a lot better than some other places are.
I would say yes. I would say yes. Yeah, unfortunately, what they are calling statewide data is not really comparable to, like, it's not giving us what we would need in terms of that information. But I would agree with you, Mary. I think that if we had that data, and I can dig around, so maybe when I do the winter presentation, I can have some more information to share with you in terms of I think our kids are doing far better than we should be celebrating this. Yeah.
We were scared. Like we were we were nervous. We were very nervous. It was very concerning.
Do we know, like, the 35 districts? Like, do we know who they are or where they are? Like, are they, like, in our area?
So we talked about that in committee earlier. I don't know. I can reach out to our rep and find out, what is safe to us. I can tell you the number of districts. I can tell you the number of students that were assessed in each district. So, sort of statistically where they came up with those numbers. I mean, what is safe to assume is they're probably districts comparable to us. Yeah.
Because they can afford.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a good point.
And I was just going to add on, because we have giggled a little about TASK, TAS, and TASK, TASK, and then the SEL teams, and what is this all about? The principals have done an amazing job of saying, when we said we have this grant money and we need to support our students, and they came up with the model for this support to identify specific student needs, right? We get granular. Specific grades. I'm even thinking, when I was at Erickson in the fall, it was a big push on the one grade and putting interventions into place. So when you see that TASK or TAS team, that is us using federal dollars to provide additional intervention supports to students before or after school,
Right.
which is really a
Based
blessing.
on this data.
Which is based on this data as one of multiple measures. And again, that is like a ground roots. We say to the principals, we have this resource, how can we do it? And they're like, we're going to try, and it's wonderfully working. So
Are we keeping data on that, on the TISC, whatever we're calling it?
Yeah.
we have data for everything.
No, I'm just saying, because I know,
Yes.
like, this is grant funded, but if we notice that it's making such an improvement, it's something that we may want to budgetarily look into.
Yeah.
We have had that
We've been talking
conversation.
about that,
Yep,
yeah.
it's a 2-year, but
Yeah.
you're right. If the data
Okay.
supports it, why isn't it there all
Yeah.
the time? Yep.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you so much. I was just wondering, you mentioned addressing equity.
How's that look? What do we do? How do we?
So, I can tell you sort of my vision. I can't tell you what's currently happening because again, day 6. So, I think from a literacy perspective, obviously it's getting text in the hands of kids that have characters that represent what our community, what kids look like. I sat in on a meeting today with the elementary coaches and our math science supervisor, and the coaches were asked to bring something that they've been doing with kids in their schools, and one of the coaches brought a book that she got from the school library that was about counting, but the characters are and the story was a family of color. And I commented like this, that we need to see more of this. So that's definitely a piece of equity we need to look at. From a data perspective, we need to really be identifying where these kids are falling short, as Diane said, at that granular level, and providing supports for these kids. Yeah. Thanks. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. No problem. No problem.
For reporting period 1 for the school year, the student safety data system includes 2 incidents at Katina. Both were confirmed HIBs. 3 incidents for Applegate. All 3 incidents were confirmed HIBs. Barkalow, 1 incident, and it was a confirmed HIB. Eisenhower, 4 incidents, 2 were violence, 2 were confirmed HIBs. Erickson, it's really small, I'm sorry, had no incidents. Donovan had no incidents. West Freehold, no incidents. And Early Childhood Learning Center had no incidents. As a district, we had a total of 10, 2 violence, 8 HIB confirmed. What kind of violence? I have to go back to those reports. Typically, it is a student conflict. Since the last meeting, we had 1 report of harassment, intimidation, and bullying, and it was confirmed.
This is the first opportunity for public participation. If anyone wishes to address the board, please write your name and address on the sign-in sheet and state your name for the record. Statements are limited to 3 minutes and should not be abusive, obscene, or defamatory in nature. As you know, we have 2 opportunities for public participation. This opportunity is for items that are on the agenda only. I didn't realize that the entire public was part of that large group, so I guess we have no public participation. So this will open the public hearing, right? Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Board of Education shall open the public hearing on the SSDS report, reporting period 1 for the school year 2021-2022. So if there's any comments or public comments on the SSDS report that Neil just gave. Okay, seeing none. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Board of Education shall close the public hearing on the SSDS report, reporting period 1 for the school year 2021-2022. So with that, we will move on to Personnel Committee. Ms. Tolman?
Personnel Committee met tonight. Present were Dr. Diane Brethauer, Mrs. Lambert, Mrs. Vendatoli, and myself, and we discussed all of the items on the agenda. We'd like to thank Mrs. Capone for her 29 years of service. Oh, I'd like to move the following items. Sorry, I'm new at this. Number 3, retirement. We'd like to thank Mrs. Capone for her 29 years of service and Barbara Kozlowski for her 9 years of service. Resignations as listed. We would like to congratulate Mr. Dickstein on being reappointed by this board for a 5-year term.
Thank you.
Thank you so much
Thank you.
for your service.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hope you don't want to change your mind after today.
I didn't.
Abolish position as listed. Creation of positions as listed. Job descriptions as listed. New employment as listed. We have Nicholas Baudo joining us to serve as our electrician, Amy Graff, and Justin Horton. Are they present today? Does anybody present today? Okay. Well, welcome to the district. Thank you so much. Rescind offer of employment as listed. Adjusted start date as listed. Transfer of assignment as listed. Extension of long-term assignments as listed. Leave of absence as listed. Salary adjustments as listed. Grant salaries as listed. Revised grant account for the middle school TAS as listed. PTO honoraria as listed. District honoraria as listed. Rescind honoraria as listed. Curriculum committees as listed. Additional compensation as listed. PBS team as listed. Certified substitutes as listed. And non-certified substitutes as listed.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Does anybody have any questions regarding any of the items? Any more questions? We'll do a roll call.
Mrs. Kansas?
Yes.
Mrs. Catalino?
Yeah, but I'm gonna abstain on number 17 and 19.
17. Mr. Quadruple?
Yes.
Mrs. O'Sullivan?
Yes.
Mrs. Patton?
Yes.
Mrs. Spelman?
Yes.
Mrs. Benatoli?
Yes.
Mr. Moroso?
Yeah.
Mr. Randall?
Yes.
Carries.
Moving on to,
Moving on to Curriculum and Policy Committee, Ms. Patton.
President, the curriculum committee met this evening. Present were Mr. Dickstein, Mrs. Montgomery, Polino, Mr. Gargiulo, and myself. We discussed all items on the agenda. The fall math data, as you saw in the presentation, and Mrs. Montgomery this evening. The ESL 3-year plan. I think I'm loud enough. Yes. I don't know. Can you hear me? Okay. Sorry, I could be loud.
That's right. Elena has one, maybe we get one of them to work. We are getting a new system. No problem.
Oh, no, it's all good.
Yeah, it's good.
We
good?
discussed
Okay. Go ahead,
that.
Jen. We can
Thank
hear
you. Oh,
Thank you.
cool.
Thank you. We discussed the RFP results with EAB and Living Yes LLC. The first reading of the policies on this evening's agenda, which we decided to take safety plan for healthcare settings and school buildings, COVID-19 off tonight's agenda. We have to make a couple of minor changes there, and we'll have it on for first reading at our next meeting. Policy second reading for school employee vaccination requirements. These are all mandated, as you'll see, which I found out tonight. When Strauss Esme puts a little M up in the thing, that means it's a mandated policy. So, all right, and that's it. So I'd like to now move item 3, bilingual English as a second language 3-year program plan. Number 4, first reading of policies with taking off 1648.14. Item 5, second reading of school employee vaccination requirements policy. Item 6, home instruction as listed. Item 7, the SSDS reporting period 1 for 2021-2022 school year. Item 8, the student teacher practicum observation placements as listed. Item 9, consultative services. And that's it.
Does anybody have any questions? Seeing none, can I have a second? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
From number 9.
Mary's like the happy
I told you.
abstainer.
I have to,
Oh, it is.
number 4, 1 now,
I was joking.
and the
No.
table.
4-1 was tabled, Jen said they tabled.
No, 4-2.
Or two was
No,
tabled.
yeah, 4-2. I'm looking at 4-1
Mm-hmm.
now,
Okay.
and the other thing on the back, 16, 48, 13, no. The rest, yes.
So the policies 4 and 5, you're saying no to?
16, 48, 13, and 16, 48, 11.
You got that? There's 14, not 13.
11 and 14.
No, the policies,
Yeah.
for the regulations 5. Policies 5.
Okay. All right, you got that? Can we
Yep.
move? Okay. So move on to finance, facilities, and transportation. Ms. O'Sullivan.
Okay, we met today as a committee, Bob DeVita, Mike Amoroso, Ally Williams, Debbie Costanza, and myself. We discussed, the budget, some items pertaining to the current year of 22-23 budget. Transportation, the committee discussed transportation staffing, long-range facility plan. The committee discussed the long-range facility plans in general. And the audit, we discussed the delay in the 2021 audit and a procurement audit for the food service account. We also looked at agenda items. So I would like to move to number 3 for bills and claims. Thank you, Mary, for looking at the bills. $2,110,653.14 for bills and claims. Number 4, travel and related expenses as listed. Number 5, travel and related expenses update as listed. Number 6, transfers as listed. Number 7, rescinded transfers as listed. Number 8, pay stipends as listed. Number 9, out-of-district tuition contract as listed. Number 10, termination of tuition contract for received students as listed. RFP for social emotional learning consultant services, 22-04, as listed. The RFP for best practices data research and professional development services, 22-05, as listed. ESEPS payments as listed. And that's it.
Does anybody have any questions for finance? Seeing none, can I have a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. No?
Bob, I need to abstain on number 8. please.
Mine is no on 11.
Harry's abstaining on 8 and Neil is no on 11. Okay. Okay. Old business, new business, president's remarks, I tend to combine all 3. I'll be brief since our meeting got delayed. I want to thank those of you that stayed for the remainder of the meeting. I know it wasn't a pleasant start, as well as everybody here this evening. I did receive a few emails again about starting up the community roundtable. I know we've all had personal stuff and COVID everywhere. So if we
We
want
were
to,
actually trying to come up with a topic recently, but yes, we definitely want to do this.
okay, so we can
Anyway, yeah,
What?
Like calendar something.
Oh, yeah.
yeah.
And then I think if we set a date and then we come up with the topic.
Yeah, that's good.
Okay. Or
Well, 'cause
any.
we had so many, it's just narrowing it down to what.
Well, I think the emails that I received, I think the public perception is that they're going to determine the topics, but as you know, we can't do it that way.
No, because the problem with that is then we have no function, you know?
Right.
What we did last time was we set a topic and we asked people, they could either email us ahead of time if they wanted to give us questions that they want to discuss, if they want to talk about it, or they could, we opened it up and had them ask questions live during it.
Right.
And we were honest, if we didn't have an answer, or if it wasn't an answer that the board could answer, we forwarded it to administration.
We put a spreadsheet together and we sent it over.
Right.
And we said, you know, whoever had registered, we'd send out the follow-up responses to.
Okay.
I mean, but we're totally open to suggestions, whatever.
Right, and that was Facebook, the format we used last time,
Well,
right?
we advertised on Facebook, but then we did a Zoom.
That's right, it was Zoom. Okay,
So we put it out via that, we made a little flyer.
okay.
Are we doing Zoom again? Ken? I think
I
it's.
think
I would
it
start
was
using Google Meet.
convenient for parents to participate.
I agree.
We had some people.
Not only
call
on
in
Zoom,
from
but not Google
work,
Meet.
Yeah,
You
I
know,
mean,
we did it around lunch.
Mm-hmm,
yeah, we did it during lunchtime, like, so if parents were working, like, if we had one topic, we did like 3 different sessions. So
Mhm.
we did like a lunchtime one, I think a nighttime one, and a daytime one. So
right,
we could get the working parents, we could get the stay-at-home parents that had the kids at school, we could get the parents that should come after work at night to log in. And doing it that way, I think we got a lot more participation.
I agree with you.
okay. So whenever you want to start that up, if anybody else wants to join
Yeah, we
them,
can rotate whoever wants.
mm-hmm. Yeah. And like we spoke about, Neil and I spoke about, we have a lot coming up on our next board meetings between budget presentations. We want to start recognizing students again. We have curriculum presentations, staff recognition. So we have a lot coming. We're going to try to pace them over the next several board meetings. So if there's any questions related to any of that coming up or any input related to any of that, just feel free to email any of us if we want to see things in a certain order that can be done in that order. You know, they would know better.
We did discuss the potential at the next meeting, February 22nd, to recognize the Governor Teacher Award winners. However, this room isn't conducive to that necessarily.
Mm-hmm.
We know we have issues with sound everywhere else we go. So we are suggesting potentially that we start the meeting at Barkalow, do that component of it, the recognition, and then move back here for the meeting, walk back over for the actual meeting. We would not have the capacity to live stream from Barkalow.
So do the staff recognition at Barkalow so their families can attend?
And other staff members if they'd like to. Mm-hmm.
Okay, but then come here just to live stream? Or maybe we,
Business meeting. Mm-hmm.
okay,
The only thing you could do is make everyone wait out there for the overflow
Right.
and call people in one at a time and have their family come with them for
Right.
pictures and stuff.
We don't have the capacity in here. There's
All right.
18 adults to be recognized and then family and others. And the 18 of them would.
right. I was gonna say, what about the ECLC, Jim?
So,
Still not big enough for
they'd have to
everybody.
come over in
It's still not
shifts.
big enough,
What, is it possible, I know we can't live stream from there, but is it possible for that one meeting to record the meeting so it's available on our website as opposed to streaming it live?
It's your decision if you want to keep it there. I think we have that capacity though.
So I don't want to misspeak. I just want to, part of the component here is that we network our sound is through this
Uh-huh,
machine. And so, we're not certain we can do that, replicate that. So we could have video, we wouldn't have sound on it.
oh,
So you could
okay,
see the recognition, you just couldn't hear it necessarily.
okay.
Not to say we couldn't figure out a workaround, but
No, I wasn't thinking for that part. I know for that part, it's just more important their families are there. I was thinking for the general business part, so we didn't have to like switch buildings or,
We can stay there. It just wouldn't be able to be.
or we could
Just
stay
don't-
here, and as Bob said, we could have everyone in
I don't think-
and then bring them
family in one at a time, you know, each person and recognize them and their family.
But their colleagues, they want their colleagues to be, sorry.
It's 6 of one, half of them of the
Yeah.
other. And
Right.
I don't want to
Okay.
commit to the sound piece, like I said, it's not the
Mhm.
camera's not the issue, it's the sound and the sound system. And we hadn't yet determined if that's a possibility to hear it, so
Okay.
it could stay there, but then I kind of have to figure it out.
Well, it
Okay.
would be potentially, it might not be live streamed, it might be recorded, and the recording might not be the same quality. Like it might be
Right.
a phone. Like,
We weren't
weren't live
live
streaming.
streaming anything. Yeah.
Gyms aren't really, we don't have to live stream, but people have become accustomed to it, and for that meeting, it would be tough
Mhm.
to not.
Right. Yeah, that's typically a large audience.
It's very low.
Okay.
We don't have to decide now, but we definitely have to let everyone know.
Mhm.
I have to advertise.
It wouldn't be, not our budget meeting next week, which starts at 7, not 7:30. We always mess that up. It's the 22nd that we're hoping, but we
Mhm.
haven't shared that with anyone yet.
Okay.
We haven't
No,
decided,
that's fine.
and we have to push it back.
No, that's fine.
Details on.
Maybe we just don't live stream that one meeting, I guess. It's during budget time. We have a meeting next week and the budget will be live streamed. We'll have a meeting 2 weeks after that again, right? We have like 5 meetings in a row where there'll be plenty of live stream for people to see the budget and everything else. So maybe we just forego live streaming for that one meeting because we want to recognize the staff and that's the best way to do it. So I guess we could talk about that. Okay.
You'd have to go through like YouTube or something.
Okay, so this is the second opportunity for public participation. If anyone wishes to address the board on any matter, please write your name and address on the sign-in sheet and state your name for the record. Statements are limited to 3 minutes and should not be abusive, obscene, or defamatory in nature. Okay, seeing none. I'd like to thank those of you that remained for staying. At this point, the board will enter executive session, whereas pursuant to NJSA 10-412B, the Board of Education may exclude the public from that portion of a public meeting which the board discusses any of the matters described at NJSA 10-412B 1 through 9. Now, therefore, be it resolved that in accordance with the provision of the Open Public Meeting Act, the Board of Education shall conduct a closed session pursuant to the personnel and legal exceptions prescribed by NJSA 10-412 for the purposes of discussing pending or anticipated contract negotiations with the FTEA and matters concerning collective negotiations and or negotiations of terms and conditions of employment of employees of the Board of Education, substitute van attendants, and the TWU contract. It is anticipated that the length of time of this executive session will be approximately 60 minutes and that action will not be taken in public after the executive session concludes. Be it further resolved that said discussion may be disclosed to the public when the reasons for discussing and acting upon it in closed session are no longer exist. So, thank you all for coming tonight. And again, I apologize for the scene earlier.